My VA is ghosting me. I can't get in touch with my virtual assistant. What do I do? This happens, and you hear about it on the internet. I'll talk about it coming right up. Okay, so have you ever experienced virtual assistant ghosting? It does happen. Hopefully not to you. Let me explain what it is, why it happens, and how to avoid it. So when people first get into outsourcing, they will very often go for a home-based virtual assistant based in a low-cost country like India or the Philippines. They're making use of what's called the geo arbitrage, and they're getting assistance, at a much cheaper cost than they could in their home country. And I don't know if it happens a lot with virtual assistants who are provided in your own country, if you're in the US or UK, I suspect not, but it can be one of the things to look out for with overseas virtual assistants. And what ghosting is that suddenly communication stops and you can't reach them on email, you can't reach them on Skype or whatever your normal form of communication is, and you're left wondering what's happened. And basically, they have shut off all communication. And very often, you will never hear from them again. So let me explain what has happened and why that happens. And it maybe happens more in the Philippines than other places, but this is what it's all about. So you have to imagine let's talk about the Philippines. You're a Filipino VA, you're working from home, you're trying to make ends meet, looking after your family. Maybe you have worked in a sort of corporate environment or one of the big BPOs, and now you're trying to make it on your own. And you're out there trying to get lots and lots of clients to, build your income and support yourself and your family. And so there's this very strong drive to, bring on as much business as possible. And what can happen is that they take on too many clients. Now, you may think you have a full-time VA, maybe you've hired a part-time VA, maybe you've hired a full-time VA. You may have hired a full-time VA, but you don't know they've actually got 2 or 3 full-time customers. So what can happen in the first instance is that they get overwhelmed with work, and probably the client that's the most difficult one in terms of supporting, they might start to ghost. Other things that can happen is quite simply, maybe they're absolutely dedicated to you and they're just working for you, but maybe they misunderstand or have misinterpreted what you want, and basically they're just scared that they've screwed up and they're not quite sure how to handle that, and they kind of don't want to face you getting angry that they've missed a deadline or something like that, and they just clam up. That can happen. It's a bit of a cultural thing because, you're potentially the big bad client sitting over there overseas, and they don't want to upset you and they're not sure how to handle that. So that can be an issue. It can also be just that communications have broken down. Maybe there's been a power cut and the internet's gone off or something like that, and they just can't communicate with you. So there are a whole bunch of reasons. One would be that you haven't paid them. So do make sure that you have a good payment system set up and that you are religiously paying on time and so on, because that's the reason they're doing this work. They really do need that money. So that's kind of how ghosting can happen, what it is, how it can happen, how to avoid it. So this will generally only happen with home-based VAs overseas, I hope. And how you can avoid it is to be in the early stages of the relationship, to make sure that you're very clear in communicating what has to be done and giving very clear deadlines, making sure that you're getting daily reports back showing what work's been done and what's still to be done and what's coming up next. So it's all about communication. And ultimately making sure that your virtual assistant knows how to do the tasks that you're delegating to them. Now, that is a challenge in the early days. So you really have to take it easy in the first days and weeks, and gradually, give them simple tasks to do and then something more complicated, and then, stepping it up. And what you've got to do in that early stage of the relationship is to build trust. It is all down to communication and trust. You need to create a situation where your virtual assistant does not have a fear of saying, John, I'm sorry, I know you've explained what this task is, I just don't get it. You know, how do you want it done? You know, I haven't done this before, I'm really not sure. Wouldn't you, as the client, much rather have that as a response? And you can say, hey, you know, Mary, Jose, whatever your name is, let me show you how to do it. Or maybe, you know, you might do a video Skype and show them what needs to be done. Ultimately, in a sort of a new VA relationship, particularly if you're new to VAs, get into the habit of creating examples and processes for them to follow. So a good rule of thumb is if you're delegating a task that is probably going to have to be done more than once or twice, create a process for it, excuse me. And the easiest way to do that is screenshots and audios and videos. Use a product like Jing or Camtasia, and you can walk them through it on your computer screen, recording it. You can send that over, and then they've got a little library of how to do the various things. So as I was saying, it's all down to communication and trust. And as you'll find in some of my earlier videos on the channel, when I first started working with a VA, I was very aware of all this. I researched it a lot, you know, some of the cultural elements and where things could go wrong. And I was very, very conscious of this two-way communication and building two-way trust. And, you know, for the first few weeks when I first had a virtual assistant, almost after every conversation, I'd say, do you understand that? You got any problems? Ask. Any questions? Just ask. And it became a bit of a joke between us. You know, we'd end a conversation and she'd say, yeah, I know, just ask. But it gave her the freedom and the confidence to ask questions at any time. And that is just so, so important. So if you're new to having a virtual assistant, do understand it's going to take a little bit of time for that relationship and confidence to build, but gee, when it does, it is such a rewarding relationship. Just give that, you know, a little bit of time up front. So that's one, I guess my main tip for avoiding this ghosting, for the thing falling over, is just having that trust and that very open communication, not loading them up too much, you know, gradually building up the tasks and so on. Like I said, that generally only happens with home-based VAs overseas. That's probably one of the biggest benefits of having an office-based VA. So if you didn't realize, this whole channel is produced by Virtual Done Well. So I have my own VA company in the Philippines. The reason I set that up was because I was a little bit uneasy about some of the home-based services I was getting. And so I just set up my own office space because I could see the benefits. And I just wanted to have this really reliable VA service for my own businesses initially, and also to provide a great working environment for the virtual assistants. And it kind of grew like topsy. You'll see other videos on the channel. But one of the great benefits, of course, in having an office-based VA, it costs a little bit more, but they are fully supported. You know, they're trained, they've got supervisors, got IT, HR support, you know, all the rest of it. So stuff like ghosting kind of doesn't happen. And in fact, in the early stages of a relationship, it very, very rarely happens. But in the unlikely event that it were to happen, that a client sort of says, hey, you know, my VA is not working out, we just put another VA in. You know, we always have spare VAs undergoing training, supporting different roles in the business who can switch straight in. So, but I think that's only ever happened once. So there we go, ghosting, what it is, how to avoid it. It's all about communication, building trust. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, do like, do comment, please comment. I reply to all the comments myself. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. That way you know every time a new video comes out, and they come out on a Wednesday. And I'll see you next week.